Welcome to Education Wave, Success Made Easy, Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Now, the topic is pollen pistil interaction and double fertilization. Now, what is this pollen pistil interaction? So, first you need to know the definition of this pollen pistil interaction. It is a dynamic process involving pollen recognition followed by promotion or inhibition of the pollen grains. So, what they are trying to say here is, for example, this is my stigma, right? And a pollen arrives here. Now, this is a dynamic process. Now, this pollen recognition occurs, this stigma recognizes the pollen. If it is compatible or if it is not compatible, it recognizes it. And how it is doing that? They go through some kind of dialogues. Like, for example, they talk. There is an interaction occurs between them, the stigma and the pollen. They both talk with each other, not like they talk. There is a chemical interaction occurs between them. And if the stigma finds this pollen compatible, it allows the pollen grain to what? Generate a pollen tube through the tissues of the stigma and along the length of this style. Okay, so this pollen tube development carries along the length of the style and it reaches, all the way through the ovary and it enters inside the ovule. Now, this pollen pistil interaction, it says the promotion. So, if it is recognized, if it is compatible, then stigma allows this. It is called promotion. And what if it is not compatible? What if the pollen grain is of different species? Or it could be of, immature. So, this is called inhibition of the pollen grains, right? So, the pistil has the ability, pistil is called the stigma, style, and the swollen part ovary. Together, they are known as pistil, right? So, this pistil has the ability to recognize the pollen, whether it is of the right type, compatible one, or the wrong type, incompatible one. So, if it is the right type, it accepts the pollen and it promotes the post pollination event. Now, what is this post pollination event? So, for example, if the pollination is done, right? The bee was responsible for the pollination and it says, now my work is done. You know, I have brought this pollen grain to the stigma. My work is done here. Now, what? This pollination is done. So, the post pollination event is this. So, this pollen grain will what? Generate a pollen tube. And how this whole process will occur. Now, these pollen also contains two male gametes, right? If you could recall this, this pollen grain structure looks like this. This bigger part is called generative. It has its own nucleus, and this is called the vegetative. And it had also one nucleus. Now, this vegetative nucleus divides into two male gametes, right? And this whole thing was for the only development process. It is a food reserve for the pollen grain. So these two male gametes, they will enter along with this length. These two male gametes are also coming, right? These two male gametes, and they will reach inside. Okay, so the ability of the pistil to recognize the pollen followed by its acceptance or it might reject is the result of a continuous dialogue. The continuous dialogue between the stigma and the pollen grain. And this dialogue is mediated by this chemical interaction, chemical components, right? Now, what happens? This thing called double fertilization is the term here. Now, we need to understand this. For example, this pollen pistil interaction is done here. Pollen lands here. There is a chemical dialogues occur between them chemically, right? And it allows the pollen grain to what? Generate a pollen tube along the style or whatever. It goes through the ovary. Now, what happens with this after that? So, for example, in angiosperm, this fertilization results into two structures. First is zygote formation, and the another is called endosperm. Now, you need to understand this with this figure. So, for example, this is my style, and this is the whole ovary structure, right? And the pollen lands here, and pollen pistil interaction occurs, and it is compatible. So it will grow a pollen tube, and it all goes, you know, towards the end of the structure called ovule. Now it enters into one of the synergid cell, right? It enters here carrying the two male gametes here, released here. Now, these phyllophilum apparatus have this function called guiding these male gametes toward the egg cell. So, these synergids, what they do is just guide the male gamete, one of the male gamete. And there is a second male gamete too, just behind it. See? So, this male gamete fuses with the egg cell. It fuses with the egg cell. And the second one, it reaches towards this central cell. Now, this central cell looks like this. There is a cell, and inside it, there is two nucleuses. Now, this reaches towards the central cell, having two nucleuses already there, and it fuses with the central cell, right? And when the one male gamete fuses with the egg cell, this is called syngamy, and it results in the formation of zygote. But when this second male gamete fuses with the central cell, this is called PEC formation. See, this is called PEN formation. For example, this double fertilization is a complex process where out of two sperm cells. See, these are my two male gametes out of these filiform apparatus, and it releases it, right? See, this is my tube. It releases the two male gametes. One is here and the second one is here. And one fuses with the egg cell. Here it was my egg cell, for example. So one fuses with the egg cell, and the second one fuses with the polar nuclei, and what results into it is first there is a zygote formation, and the second there is a polar primary endosperm nucleus formation. Sorry. So this is called primary endosperm nucleus formation, right? So first is zygote formation, and then PEN is primary endosperm nucleus formation, because it is kind of having three nucleus, right? So it is called triploid, and this is zygote 2N, because the egg cell has only one nucleus, and the way male gamete fuses with it, it has now two nucleuses, right? So it is diploid in nature. Now, since endosperm is a product of fusion of three haploid nucleus, it is called triple fusion. Eventually, this primary endosperm nucleus, develops into primary endosperm cell. It will form a cell, and this cell is going to known as endosperm, for nutrition purpose. It will provide the nutrition for the zygote to develop into seed, right? So this is called double fertilization. So this central cell is going to form PEN first, then primary endosperm nucleus, and then it will form primary endosperm cell, and then endosperm. And this endosperm will help with the zygote formation. Okay. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you so much.